Okay, let me try to explain stuff to the best of my knowledge. So, we have a cortex, right? Like something like that. The two sides are connected, whatever, right? And we have a bunch of nucleus here, right? So one of them is putamen caudate nucleus, globus pallidus, externa, interna. Then we have subthalamic, and then we have the substantia nigra has two parts, right? So I want to make things simpler, right? So this is what I'm going to do. First of all, this cortex is too big, so I'm going to get rid of most of it. I just need half of it to explain what I'm about to say. Right? So imagine that's the cortex. So we said these two, this is caudate nucleus, and this guy was a putamen. So both of them are striatum, so just going to connect them, right? That's all I need to explain the mechanism. So I'm going to draw something big here. I call it striatum, right? So don't think of putamen or caudate, it's gone. And the next thing I'm going to move around is, so we said this guy is glupus pallidus interna, glupus pallidus externa. So I want to move them around a little bit. So I'm going to put the glupus pallidus interna in here. So this is glupus pallidus interna, right? I'm going to put glupus pallidus externa in here. So you laugh now, but you may not laugh after I explain, okay? Or you may laugh more, I don't know. So I'm just moving stuff around, right? So then we said we have the substantia nigra. So, okay, let me say that here. So substantia nigra is this one, right? So it has two parts. One is substantia nigra reticularis. One is substantia nigra pars compacta, or something like that. You know what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna get the reticularis. So substantia nigra reticularis. I'm gonna put it here. Okay, and then I'm gonna put the substantia nigra. Use another part. Substantia nigra pars compacta in here. Okay. So far so good. You're happy? Okay. So I got rid of that too. Right. The last part, this is the subthalamic nucleus. So subthalamic nucleus. I'm gonna put it here just for fun. So that will be subthalamic nucleus. Now I'm gonna put some signs around here, right? Oh, for fun, why not we put thalamus too? I heard it's important. Thalamus. I know you cannot read my handwriting, but I hope you can understand my whatever explanation. So just gonna put some sign. So this guy was the cortex, right? So I'm gonna put some sign to state whether something is excitatory or inhibitory. Cortex, imagine that's something excitatory, right? Striatum would be inhibitory, right? Glupus pallidus interna would be inhibitory. Right? Substantia nigra is inhibitory, right? Glupus pallidus externa is inhibitory, right? Thalamus is excitatory. Subthalamic nucleus is excitatory, right? So far so good. Do we understand? We don't? Okay. Hopefully we do. Because if we don't, then we are screwed. So I want you to understand something. There is a reason to put stuff in this manner, because we have some input, some output, right? So our input would be substantia nigra from cortex. So this guy gonna get input from the cortex, right? These two fellows are, well, I'm sure you cannot see what I'm talking about. So gluteus pallidus interna and substantia nigra pars reticularis, or reticularis, whatever. That one, these two are output. So output, output. So whoever goes to thalamus is output. Whoever comes to striatum, I mean, gets information from cortex is input. So striatum would be input, gluteus pallidus interna, and substantia nigra pars reticularis is output, right? So let me highlight the output, and whatever else is just there, right? You'll see what I'm talking about in a few seconds. Now, let's just follow a scenario, which is called a direct path, right? So, direct path. So the direct path, let me just draw 3. I don't know why I'm showing the nerves like this. I hope you do. I don't know why. So let's say I'm just drawing 3 nerves. So the direct path, the striatum gonna send information to substantia nigra reticularis and gluteus pallidus interna, right? So let's see what's happening. Step one, cortex sending so this is direct path, excitatory to striatum, right? So striatum gets excited, but all it's know is to inhibit. See, it inhibits, right? So even though you excite striatum, but it's gonna inhibit whatever is after it. And what is after it in direct path is gluteus pallidus interna and substantia nigra reticularis. And both of them are inhibitors too, right? So if you're inhibiting an inhibitor, right? It's like well, let's talk about it this way. If you don't let me do something, I'm not gonna do it, right? It's simple as that. But if somebody stops you from stopping me from doing something, then I'm gonna do it, right? Right? Let's say you live in a, I don't know, family. You want to do something, your mom doesn't let you do it, right? Right? So just to be clear, this is you, and this is your mom. I mean, you have 2 moms, but who cares? So gluteus pallidus interna and substantia nigra reticularis are your mom, right? And your dad, he doesn't care. He's just opposite of your mom, right? So that's your dad, right? So you want to do something, it's you. Your mom tells you don't do it, and your dad gonna tell your mom don't tell him to not do it. So then you're gonna do it, right? Does it make sense? Well, leave your mom and dad alone and do your whatever you want to do. So does that make sense? So, and this guy gonna talk to the cortex. So in direct path, the striatum, your dad gonna stop your mom who wants to stop you. That means you're gonna do whatever you want to do in your life, which is talking to cortex. Apparently, that's your goal of life. Okay. So that's direct path. So direct path is excitatory, right? Okay, now let's talk about the indirect path, right? So what happens is you have a new player in the indirect path, and that would be subthalamic nucleus, which is someone positive, right? So just gonna go with the previous scenario, which was, if I remember correctly, that's your dad who is always against your mom. Apparently you have 2 moms, and this is you, right? Now, so what happens is now we have 2 other people that are gonna be in this path for indirect whatever scenario. So the 2 people that we're gonna add up here, one of them is a positive person, one of them is a negative person, right? So So I call this negative person, I don't know, friend 1, and I call the positive person friend. Apparently I cannot spell friend, but who cares? So friend 2 is a positive person, friend 1 is a negative person, right? So if you, I don't know, excite friend 1, you're gonna break everything. So negative, right? Friend 2, if you excite friend 2, you're gonna do positive stuff, right? So what happens is in indirect path, the let me just tell you the striatum, I mean the names, and then I go to or analogy, whatever. So this striatum, I'm going to talk to gluteus pallidus externa. So that's this one. Gluteus pallidus externa, I'm going to talk to um, subthalamic nucleus. Subthalamic nucleus, going to go and talk to these two, which are substantia nigra reticularis and gluteus pallidus interna. And then those gonna, that's the rest of the story, is like talk to thalamus, and thalamus gonna go back and talk to the cortex, right? So that's just the whole path. But see what happens now. So your dad, who is always a negative person, I mean, whatever, you know what I'm just making examples so you can remember. I don't know your dad, you know that, right? Maybe I do. Okay, who cares? So your dad, gonna talk, well, the way he talks is he stops people. He is trying to stop gluteus pallidus externa, or friend 1, right? And friend 1, if it wasn't for your dad, he was, because he's negative. See, friend 1 is negative. You see that negative thing? He was trying to stop his subthalamic nucleus, right? So his job, like friend 1, was to stop friend 2. Now your dad interfered, and so your dad interfered with him, right? And he stopped his job, which was stopping friend 2, right? So your dad stopped friend 1, who was stopping friend 2, right? So, so the indirect path, basically, your dad is stopping friend 1. Who knew that friend 2, who is now not stopped because your dad stopped friend 1, who was stopping friend 2, is it very confusing? So what you can assume is these two are out, okay? So out, right? Because he stopped the other one, gone. So your friend 2 is a good friend of your mom, which apparently you had 2, like anything is possible. So um, so your friend 2 is actually a positive person. It doesn't matter what other people say, whatever they say, he said yes, yes, okay? So your friend 2 is helping your mom, right? So you're gonna be friend with your mom, and you're gonna be very supportive of your mom. And your mom, if you remember, if you forgot, just think of your life, is someone who is stopping you, right? So subthalamic nucleus, friend 2, the positive one, is a supportive person, and he supports anything, right? And you're gonna help your mom to stop you, right? So less work of thalamus, so you can work less, so less excitation for the cortex. Does that make sense? So indirect would be inhibitory, right? One thing that I should mention is, I know not entire stratum is inhibitory. I know, like, we are talking about majority. I just want to simplify things, right? Now, you see this guy just quietly sitting here, this one, yeah? Substantia nigra pars compacta, right? Like the compact part. That guy has a interesting role, and that's making dopamine, if I'm not mistaken. So you're gonna send dopamine to a striatum, but a striatum has 2 parts, right? Whatever. So let's forget about the parts. Let me just, why would I do this? Okay, let me just make this a little bit cleaner. So So you're going to send dopamine to two parts. Let's say two pathway. So remember, this path is for the direct, so call it D1. Guess what? I didn't call it D1. Many other people did that too. So these are the receptors. So D1, I just put a plus sign and I put a negative sign for D2. So D1 is excitatory, D2 is inhibitory. So if you give dopamine to D1, right, you're going to be excitatory. If you give dopamine to D2, you're going to be inhibitory, right? So let's see if you follow what I'm saying. So what happens is, if you put dopamine from substantia nigra pars compacta, or whatever compact part of the substantia nigra, if you put it to the D1, that means in the direct path, right? So you're going to excite striatum even more, right? So if you excite a striatum, your dad, he's a negative person, right? So you're going to stop your mom even more. So you have more freedom to do something, right? Simple. Okay. So now let's talk about the D2, right? So see what happens. So what happens is substantia nigra pars compacta, sorry, are gonna send dopamine to D2, right? But remember, D2 is inhibitory. So that means D2 gonna inhibit the striatum. You're gonna inhibit your dad, right? Does that make sense? So if you inhibit your dad, what happens is you're gonna make friend one is stronger. So if friend one is stronger, right? It gonna see the job of friend one was a negative person, whatever. Because he was a negative person and he's a stronger, he's gonna stop friend number two, the positive one. So friend number two would not help your mom to stop you. Does that make sense? So that means this guy, right, is now slowed down, right? So if you slow down this guy, right, what happens in this indirect path is your mom is not as strong, so you can actually work harder, right? So dopamine in both pathways gonna make you work more because dopamine added the negative things to striatum. Okay, now let's talk about the what are we talking about? Oh, Parkinson. So in Parkinson, easy peasy, right? Say that in 2 seconds. So Parkinson, you're not making dopamine, right? So think about it. If you don't make dopamine, doesn't matter because with the dopamine, no matter which path you take, it's gonna excite you more, right? If you're not making dopamine, that means you're not helping the excitation of cortex because ultimately you're gonna excite cortex, right? So basically, you're not gonna move, right? Simple. Now let's talk about Huntington. So Huntington attack gonna attack these neurons in indirect pathway, right? So think about it. These neurons are not working, right? So these neurons that your dad, just like you put a tape on your dad's mouth, so you're not gonna talk to friend number one. I mean, to stop friend number one. Remember, he was stopping friend number one. So that means friend number one freely gonna stop friend number two, the positive guy, right? So if you stop friend number two, right, what happens is your mom has less power because your friend number two was the one who were helping your mom, pushing your mom to stop you, right? Now that friend is not there, right? So what happens is uh, your friend number two is not there, so your mom cannot stop you as much, right? So that means you can do whatever you want to do. You're gonna be excited. You're gonna, I don't know, you know what you're gonna do. So I don't need to explain that to you. But apparently you're gonna talk to cortex, and that's not good, right? So, long story short, because these neurons are problematic, right? For some reason, that means the indirect pathway is not working properly. And if you remember, the indirect pathway was inhibitory overall for the cortex, right? So that means if someone has Huntington, their thalamus gonna get less inhibitory messages, right? So less inhibitory signals, and they're going to be more excited, and it's going to excite cortex even more. So the person going to have uncontrollable movement and stuff like that. The last thing I want to say very quickly: these two, direct and indirect pathway, are not working independently, right? So there is a balance, like whoever works more gonna kill the other one or whatever. They may also work together, as was the case for the dopamine. So just think of them all together.